I'm Graham Nichols.
And I'm Mark Bentham.
And I'm Katie Holloway. You are listening to Ordinary. Hello, happy Friday to the listeners. Actually, the listeners will listen to this any day. They probably don't listen to it on the day it's out. But special shout out to you if you do. Happy Tuesday to you too. You're all right? How's your week been?
It's been all right so far, yes. Apparently it's your anniversary today of being here about a year. Is that right?
I reckon it must be about now. I don't know. I didn't actually count, and it didn't cross my mind until we all talked about resigning just now. So,
all right, well,
just for the clarity,
it was a joke.
You two talked about resigning.
It's
I
true.
didn't. I was looking for new presenters.
No, we're all right. We're carrying on. We are good. In a minute, when we reveal the episode title, you'll see why we joked about that. Yeah. Did you know
you
yesterday?
were joking, were you? Oh.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. Well, I don't know about Graham.
What about yesterday?
Yesterday, but I know you like the weather, a meteorological thing. Yesterday was the autumn equilux. Have you heard of an equilux?
Which is not the equinox.
No, it's different.
I don't know what it is.
It was the day when there was exactly 12 hours of sunlight and daylight. So it's a different day at different parts of the world, but apparently in Britain it was yesterday.
Well, there you go.
I thought that's called the equinox when the nights are equal to the day, but maybe it's called the equilux as well. But
I don't know. I saw it on Twitter. It might not be right, but I'd never heard the term equilux before, and I liked the new word.
Yeah, you've only served to depress me because it means the nights are drawing in even faster now because the graph goes down and down.
It just means that Christmas is nearly here.
Yep.
Mark's trying to get a full house on the bingo.
Oh,
I'll continue
Christmas! Here we go.
Yeah, good. I'm looking forward to the darkness.
Yeah, it's properly dark when I get up now.
I think it's most spiritual to like light and not like darkness. So I think liking long days is very spiritual.
Yes, but in looking forward to the lights at Christmas is equally as spiritual.
No,
I'm
sorry,
all right with it.
I was going to say they're the Isaiah kind of making your own lights, light your own fires and burn. So that's what I think about Christmas.
You're going to burn it. Yeah, I don't mind the dark. It's all right because it kind of, you draw nearer to Christmas and then you get Christmas, and by the time Christmas is here, it's actually, it's getting lighter again, isn't it? So
this is true.
This
is true, but January, February are depressing months, but let's not go there.
Yeah, we've got a couple of February birthdays in our house, so that brightens it up a bit, I reckon.
If you're listening, though, in our church, it means we're in full throttle planning Christmas mode for evangelistic events, and wherever you're listening, you should be too. Yeah,
surely any church is September, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for those listeners in Australia, look forward to your summer and the full light and the whole lengthy days, etc., etc.
Have we got any listeners in Australia?
Of course we have. We've got listeners all around the world, Katie.
We've got some in Brazil, and Brazil, they put Father Christmases and snow and stuff, but it's obviously the climate's generally mild. Yeah, Santa's as well. That person that, doesn't exist and all that, but does exist. Does exist as a plastic model,
and it's only September,
and a very lovable character. They have them apparently, and it's all a bit sort of bizarre because you have sort of fake snow and everything else in a hot country.
Fake snow to go with your fake Santa.
That's in the sun.
Yeah. Well, how do we get onto Christmas so fast?
That's because Mark wanted us to.
It's always Mark.
Right. Talking of things we don't like. That was not a good segue, was it? Today's, if you're listening, you can tell what it's called because it'll be the podcast title, so it's not even a big reveal. But the topic today is I don't feel like it, and that's why we were joking about resigning, but just a joke. So it kind of came off the back of a conversation that I had with someone yesterday, which Graham was actually listening in on as well. We were just talking about different areas of service where we just, honestly, sometimes we just don't really want to do it. And I think it must be quite a common feeling, I think, that you're involved in some kind of church service, serving in some way for your church or anything, even just your family maybe, but particularly church service, that sometimes you just don't feel like doing it. So I thought it was worth discussing. What do you reckon? Is that a normal feeling to feel that sometimes? Are pastors exempt from that? No one wants to admit that.
We live in a fallen, broken world, don't we? And we don't always feel like doing everything we want to or needs to. But
there are different reasons, aren't there?
It probably reveals our hearts.
Yeah.
It does, but it sometimes reveals different bits of our hearts, doesn't it? Yeah. In the sense that sometimes it's because of us, sometimes it's because of the job itself, either being tedious or extremely demanding or perhaps not suited to our gifts necessarily. Sometimes it's to do with other people who may get us demoralized in doing the thing. They may not mean to, but just by their behavior or by their interaction with us or, relationship with them. So in a sense, you're right, Mark. It's always something to do with our hearts not reacting to those things. But there are sometimes different causes, and we may want to deal with them differently depending on kind of what we think is at the heart of the problem with our discontent. And it may be we just need to change our heart attitude. It may be that we need to change our heart attitude and we need to change what we're doing. And that might depend on lots of different factors.
Yeah. And I guess...
you didn't look very convinced by that, Mark. You looked a little bit like it's always the heart and we just need to change our hearts.
Well, I guess it's more just trying to work out what we mean by I don't feel like it. Our culture is all about feelings and I only do what I feel like. So what do we mean by I don't feel like it? I think that that sounds more, I just, I'm down by it, I'm fed up with it, I've had enough. Is different to I'm struggling with this because it's hard, which is a slightly kind of goes into the areas where what you were saying there in terms of may not be my gift. I find this hard. It's struggling. It's different to that phrase. I don't feel like it, which sounds like kind of where we are in the world, which means unless I feel it, I'm not going to do it. Which is different to this is hard, this is tough, I'm struggling with this, help, or gosh, this is just hard work because it's boring, tedious, which are just different expressions of that, I think.
Yeah, as I was chewing it over, I was thinking about, I was trying to work out, well, firstly, how does everyone feel like this is just me who's just miserable, doesn't want to do things? But then I was chewing it over and thinking, is this how it was designed to be, or is this a part of the fall? And I was thinking about the fall, and of course God says then the ground is cursed, like work's going to be hard. So I guess we'll always find service hard. Now sometimes it's hard and we're joyful, like this is hard work, but we've got the good motivation to do it, we're keen to get stuck in and break ground and whatever it is, but sometimes it's hard and it's just hard. Is that part of it as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just even, think about the spiritual kind of prayer meetings are hard work. It's one of the reasons why I think many don't attend, because there is a work likeness to it that means it's hard, even though there is a joy in it. Writing and preaching sermons is hard work, even though there's a joy in it. So that there are things where we know they're good, we can sense that there is something good, but it is hard, and the fall touches upon everything, and it touches upon every aspect of us. Those two factors combined will make things difficult.
So when does it become a problem then, us not wanting to do a particular task or service for the church?
I think it becomes a problem, I suppose, when we when we stop doing it for the wrong reasons. Or when it makes us bitter and those kind of things. I do think positively it's worth saying that serving is a privilege, but serving involves sacrifice. So we have to sometimes go back to those principles of it's a joy and a privilege, and that the idea of serving with joy is there in the Bible, but the idea of serving with sacrifice is there in the Bible as well. So we would expect to feel a degree of what you were just saying, Katie, contentment and joy in serving, but at times the arduousness and the pain of it, sometimes we'd expect to feel both of those things. So it would be perfectly normal to feel those. And I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves that it's serving for the glory of God, not for our satisfaction. And as we serve for the glory of God, we serve God's people. So I think where it goes wrong is where we're serving because we think it's quite fun expressing our particular gifts, or where we forget that we're doing it for the glory of God, but we're doing it for the glory of us, or it stops giving us whatever it was giving us, which was probably idolatrous in the first place. And where we stop loving people, so thinking, this is hard work, but because I love people, because I love God, then I'll keep going. So I think the thing where it goes wrong is where we lose sight of those things. I don't know if we're going to come back to it, but I do want to say it's okay to stop doing things sometimes, but it's the process of getting there, as Mark was saying, that's important. It's not just, I don't like doing this anymore, I want to stop, but there are sometimes times where either the work is too hard for us at this season in life, or our gifts are really not suited, and we were helping, but it's not the right thing for us long term, or we just need refreshing by doing something else. Those are legitimate things to ask for, but it's the revulsion against serving God, loving other people, where I think it goes wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry, revulsion sounds a bit too strong, but the reluctance sounds a bit softer, doesn't it? A bit more English. The reluctance to do those things.
Yeah. I guess we don't want to serve begrudgingly. That would be a bad sign. But actually, I feel like there have been times when I've thought, I just don't want to do this thing. And I kind of do it anyway, begrudgingly. And actually, while I'm doing it, I change and I, get into the task and the people around you or whatever. And I'll come away afterwards like, actually, I really enjoyed that. Sometimes happens. But I guess that's not the reason why you do it.
No, and we're not very good at assessing ourselves, and we're not very good at assessing other people at times. So sometimes I might say, I'm really not very good at this, so I just need to stop doing it. Yeah. But other people can often help us by saying, without sort of pandering to our ego too much, saying, no, you're okay at this. You're actually gifted at this. What you're doing is really helpful. Sometimes we do need to hear that, because we're not very good at judging it, because it seems hard work, and we think, or either we genuinely think we're not very good at it, or sometimes we use that as an excuse to say we don't want to do it anymore because it's hard work. But I think as preachers and leaders, you sometimes think, am I really any good at this? This is just such hard work, and there's probably better people. You go to a conference and see someone else and you think, man, they seem to be having much more success than I do. Or they seem to be much more able than I do, or they're much more Bible knowledgeable than I am, or they've got a much better rounded personality than I am. All those sort of things. Yeah. That's when I go
Thanks
with
for
Mark.
sharing all your insecurities with us.
All those things. Yeah, well, I have an equal measure of arrogance and pride. So, I have insecurity and pride at times. So sometimes I think, I'm much better than those people. So that happens too, just to give you the full rounded picture. Basically, I'm a nightmare at conferences, thinking either, depressing about myself or arrogant pompousness. Yeah. So there we are. Of course, Mark's much more even-handed and doesn't do any of those things.
That was one of the things that I wanted to ask, that it feels like even when you are enjoying service, you can still do it with bad motives. So, I feel like you can't win. Should we just give up? Or should we just stop assessing our hearts all the time and just go on with it? What do you reckon, Mark?
Well, our hearts are always going to be mixed.
Yeah.
There's always going to be mixed motives. I'm never going to do anything perfect because I'm a sinful being. And I think we get unstuck in that way when we start to think, actually, because I'm enjoying this, it's going to be a bad thing. But actually, there is delight in serving the Lord. And the Lord has wired us up with different personalities, temperaments. That will mean that some of us will serve in particular ways and we'll find delight in that, whereas others will find those ways, serving those particular ways, just completely not where they are, and find it just no sense of joy. And that's partly, the way the Lord has designed it, hasn't it? You know, the body has different functions. So the arm is not the leg. So there's going to be different abilities, temperaments, giftings that are then played out. And, you know, it's not wrong, because I think the Lord designs it this way, that actually I find joy in serving him with the gifts that he has given me, that there is going to be a joy. Where it moves into a difficulty is when I begin to delight in my ability and what I, you know, so about what it gives me, you know, approval from others, praise, a sense of this is, you know, I'm fulfilled because I have done this, rather than my fulfillment is in the Lord. And, you know, we want to be observing that, and there will be times when I get that wrong. You know, I'm sure when I preach on a Sunday, you know, most Sundays, you know, your heart motive is to preach for the glory of Christ and to see people transformed. But you also know that there's always something in the back of you that they're seeking the approval of others and wanting to hear praise and good things. And when we sense that, we repent of it and we seek the face of Jesus. But at the same time, we need encouragement. So there's always a mixture, isn't there? But it's what my heart is craving. And the Bible is quite clear. What I crave, what I worship, is what I become. You know, so if actually my dominance in serving, even if I'm good at it, is all about serving for my glory, there will be an aspect where actually that will be what it becomes, and it will become obvious and detrimental to that.
Yeah. So say we're doing a ministry and we just don't want to do it on a particular day or generally. Should we just do it anyway, or is it better to stop? Like, I was thinking about Malachi, and when he's saying to the Israelites, and they kind of giving really half-hearted offerings, and like then just their heart's not in it, they're doing it kind of reluctantly, and God doesn't like that. He said, I'm not going to accept those offerings, and I'm displeased with you, my people. Is there something like that going on when we're kind of serving, you know, half-heartedly, don't really want to do it? Is it better to stop or keep going, or
I think it's better to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I think often in serving, whether it's leading a church or leading a children's ministry or serving on a rota of some other kind, I think there's just a principle of commitment and our yes being yes. So I think there is a duty to keep serving in a particular ministry for a season that we've committed to. So, you know, it's an extreme example, but, you know, if you have a bad children's club one week and you say, I'm going to quit now and I'm not going to do the rest of the term, I think there's an irresponsibility about that, you know, unless something very extreme happened that was traumatized you or something. But, you know, generally speaking. So I think we need to, first of all, think about, well, what's my commitment? But then ask lots of questions, I think, like, why am I feeling like this? Is it to do with the ministry itself, or is it to do with me? Is it to do with my attitude, or is it to do with my gifting? Is it to do with it's taking too much of my time and I can't fulfill other responsibilities I have? You know, start to ask those questions and find, sorry?
Is it I'm just tired? You know, is it I'm just grumpy? You know, like all those kind of added extra questions. Yeah. I'd probably just keep wanting to say that it's not wrong to stop something. It's just the process by which you get there. And often it's okay to stop things and change for kind of refreshment, or because it's not quite appropriate. Sometimes it is appropriate, though, to keep going because there's a need, and you do have the opportunity in time, and you do have the opportunity in terms of gift, and you can do it. And sometimes you do have to just say, this is what the Lord has called me to do for this time. Not a life sentence necessarily, but probably for a little bit longer than just sort of seeing out the next term or something. And it may be that as I keep going with this, the Lord will give me more contentment in that, and I need to pray about that and keep thinking. I think if long term you're very discontented with the ministry, I'm sure all churches will be the same. We'd never want people who feel trapped by a particular ministry that they no longer have their heart for. I mean, sometimes it's like genuine questions to ask about the ministry itself, to say, is this actually fulfilling any good purpose? Am I not enjoying it because it's not
glorifying to God. It's not reaching the lost. It's not serving the saints. It's serving itself. And so, so there's loads of questions you can ask, but it's asking the questions, not just saying, I don't feel like doing this anymore, so I'm going to stop. It's probing all those questions and probing our motives as well.
And I'd add another layer in on that, which I think all of those are absolutely right questions to be asking. But I think there's an honesty with ourselves, because I think we are probably more influenced by our culture than we imagine or hold. And our culture is driven by a sense of entertainment. It's driven by a sense of doing what feels good to me. And there are times when I do things which just don't feel, they're sacrificial, they're costly, they're other-centered. I don't feel like doing it, but we do it because it's right, it's obedient, and I think one of the things when you see scripturally is that that's what distinguishes us from animals. Animals do what they desire, that they're all on instinct. And actually, when we become less than that, is when we allow those desires, those feelings to so drive us that is only if I'll do something that feels right. Actually, we become animal-like. We become less than what we've been made to be. And as kind of Peter puts it, we're creatures of instincts rather than actually God-given image bearers who are called to rule. Which means that I can at times say, I don't desire this, I don't feel like this, but I am going to do it for the glory of God. And it might mean that in that moment I need to repent, because actually my heart has just stunk. Like I'm just kind of, sinful, grumpy, whatever it is. But I have that choice as an image bearer of God, and particularly as a spirit-filled believer, to say, actually, I don't feel it, but I am going to do it. And I think often in those moments, the Lord then, as I seek to honour him, motivated by grace, motivated by the gospel, often actually he brings a blessing and a joy to that. And that may be a one-off, that may come over a period of weeks. And, a number of people who kind of entered ministries serving, not enjoying it, finding it hard, but kind of just sensing, there is a rightness to this, I need to just persevere. And over time, it's just become a delight for them. But I think we've just got to be careful that we're not quickly bouncing into something because it's hard, it doesn't feel, I don't desire it, into these kind of, this can't be right, rather than prayerfully thinking, okay, what is it? Is there a need here? Have I got the giftings? Can I serve? Is this just a season where I've just got to persevere and ask for the Lord's help to change how I'm responding to this, rather than immediately thinking, I've got to, that's it, give it up, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And I was thinking that we're called to follow in Christ's footsteps, aren't we? And he came to not to be served, but to serve.
Yeah.
And even as I was chatting at this, I had a repeat of the same conversation today with the same person. And I was like, but Jesus never didn't want to do something, did he? And then I was like, well, of course he did. I was thinking of Gethsemane. Like, he stands there, Lord, if there's a, Father, if there's a way that I don't have to do this, let it not happen, but not my will, but yours. Like, Jesus didn't, in one sense, didn't want to go to the cross, but he did it anyway, and obviously was the right thing to do, to say the least. So I guess there's got to be an element of that sometimes, but it's all muddled up, isn't it? And I sometimes wish God would just send me a WhatsApp message and with some clear instructions on what to do.
But this is why we have one another, isn't it? To help us ask questions and discern, because on lots of these things, it's there's a nuance to it because of our hearts, because of our own sinfulness, because of our situation, circumstances, season of life, ministry. There's many aspects to it. But I think if we are, there's a humility to us that says, actually, at the end of the day, I just want to do what is right and serve the Lord wholeheartedly, and seeking his face in the sense of that, Lord, is this right? Is this just my heart being wicked? Is this, and I'm asking for wisdom and help. Would you bring it? I think the Lord answers that, and things will become clear, whether this is just me being a bit of a grumpy old man, or whether this is actually there's something wrong here with the ministry that I'm beginning to sense and see, but I can't quite put my finger on it, or there's something just not right with my gifting shaping at this particular time in this particular season of life, and asking the Lord for that, rather than kind of just assuming, I don't feel it, so I'm not going to do it.
Really good points from a grumpy old man. It cheered me up that you thought you could potentially be a grumpy old man, both grumpy and old. So that cheered me up. But I think with the person that you obviously had this chat with again today, that you're doing exactly what Mark was saying in the sense that there's a conversation happening, and I'm sure conversation with other people as well happening, which is kind of talking all that out. So, sometimes it can be a bit ugly and raw, can't it? When we, particularly with those who are close to us, where we might express our frustration, but starting the conversation and starting to raise those questions can kind of expose our hearts, and then we can work out kind of what to do from there. Just to reinforce your point, Mark, I think it's a really helpful one about the cultural influence. I was just pondering as you were saying that it influences what we think about our careers as well outside of church. That I've talked to people recently about work isn't always that fulfilling and wonderful, and so you shouldn't feel that depressed. You should just feel that maybe it is just a bit dull, and it might be dull for another couple of years, or it might get a little bit better, or it might just stay a bit dull. But the joy is in working for the Lord, not in the satisfaction of the work in and of itself. But I think particularly sort of middle class culture would be, you need to find fulfillment and purpose, and if it's not fulfilling you need to find another job, rather than if thinking, well, the priority is doing good work and providing for my family and dignifying the work. That's the priority rather than fulfilling me. But I think you're right that does creep then into the church and in the jobs that we do.
Yeah, for sure. What about then, just to veer off on a slight tangent before we finish, does the same kind of thinking apply to things like going to church, going to prayer meetings, Bible studies, whatever they are? Like sometimes we don't feel like doing those things. Should we apply the same kind of principles, if we don't feel like going?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. We're going to say yes.
Yeah.
We all feel that, don't we? There are times when I don't feel like going to church, for whatever reason, or the prayer meeting. But actually, our response, isn't it? At the end of the day, there are elements where I just need to rehearse the gospel to myself. I just need to remind myself of what it is Christ has done, and seek His face, and just kind of step out in one sense in faith. Lord, you know where my heart is on this. I'm sorry, I'm going to go in faith. And more often than not, the Lord always encourages, blesses, and helps us in that. Because when we seek to do the right thing, seek first His kingdom and His right, everything else comes from that. And going to church, being with God's people, He commands it. He commands us to pray together. So when we do that which He has said, this is good for us, then there will be blessing from that, even when it's hard and even when it's tough. And of course, there'll still be days when I go to church and it's been a shocker of a morning. I preached an absolute doozy, and you feel wretched, and you kind of feel discouraged. But that's part of living in a fallen world as well, isn't it? But the Lord's still using that.
I can hand on heart say I've never got up and preached a terrible sermon. So,
well, there you go.
There we are. I'm winning.
A doozy. It's going to get harder as as we get into the winter and all those dark nights.
Yeah.
And because it's clearly easier for all ages, I think, to go out when it's a bit more sunny.
For sure.
You get the secondary distraction that you might have gone out somewhere else in the sun, but generally speaking, it's if it's a kind of prayer meeting night or a planning meeting or something, and it's dark, it's just that little bit more effort to get out and get to it. And as Mark says, that God in His goodness often blesses us. So there is a sort of self-interest in a good way, spiritual interest, reason for going often. But we also need to think about other people. People are so encouraged to see other people who are Christians who have made the same effort that they've made, and are thinking, well, I know you're busy as well, and I know you've got, kids at home and had to leave your husband or wife, bathing them or whatever, or, I understand you've got a lot going on in your life. It's so encouraging when someone says, no, but I want to prioritize on this, so I'm here. So you encourage other people as well as being blessed yourself as you gather. Obviously, there are weeks where you just can't. But it's how you feel about it, really, rather than what you're able to do every single week. It's where you would want to be.
Yeah.
More than where you actually end up.
Yeah. I had a really interesting thought and it has left my head. So just let's just pretend I said something really insightful and helpful.
Wow, that's amazing, Katie.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, I thought of it myself. Can I recommend a book?
Yes.
Sure.
In the meantime. Serving Without Sinking by John Hindley, which probably is the one you knew I was going to recommend. I haven't read it for years, actually, but it's probably time to reread it. Yeah, it's exactly that. I remember it being really helpful in... It's maintaining the joy while you're serving. I remember what I was going to say now. It was a helpful book. I recommend that.
And his other book, Dealing with Disappointment.
Oh, I haven't read that.
For people in sort of ministry, Paul Tripp, what's it called?
Dangerous Calling?
No, that as well. Isn't there one about... Well, perhaps it is Dangerous Calling. Perhaps that's the one.
I don't know.
Gospel leadership?
No, isn't there one about finishing the race or something? Or what's it called? I can't remember what it's called.
There's one called The Joy of Service, which is the little green one, but I can't remember who wrote that. Oh, look, here it is.
FIC special.
That's one of those little ones.
Yeah.
Julian Hardiman.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That I remember was similar and quite helpful, and I think you can probably get it for £1. It's one of those little ones, isn't it? Yeah, what I was going to ask is, harking back to Malachi, if I go to the prayer meeting a bit begrudging, is God going to reject me and say that doesn't please me? I'm not going to accept that offering.
I don't think God works like that in the sense that we're in Christ, but it depends a lot on degree, doesn't it? We might go grudgingly, but with a sort of willing acceptance that this is what we need to do, and if we sincerely pray, God is very gracious and hears us. So I think, it depends the degree of hypocrisy, doesn't it? And it's not as simple as, God hears, God doesn't hear. God will deal with us, and we need to sometimes repent of being completely hypocritical in prayer. Sometimes we're perhaps praying a little bit better than we feel, but we are disciplined and conscious in that, and we're not being hypocritical in one sense. We're just seeking to lift our spirits. It's a bit like praising, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you sing praises, you sometimes express exactly how you feel. You sometimes elevate how you feel by expressing it. I don't think I don't think you're insincere when you're doing that. If you completely disengage your brain, or you pretend to be exultant when you're completely indifferent, I think that's different than being, I want to sing this because I really mean it, but as I sing it, I mean it a bit more. I think that's okay.
Yeah. I'm just giggling. We sang a song a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember which one it was, but there's a bit in it that goes, "Oh, I feel like dancing," and I just couldn't sing it because I don't feel like dancing. I never feel like dancing. I'm never going to dance, so I just couldn't bring myself to sing it. And
I think there's sincerity in that.
Yeah, maybe. But Stuart said, I can't sing that. We should remove that. I hate that song. And he said, yeah, but maybe you should feel like dancing. It's like, But we did
I feel like dancing, but sort of in brackets something like, but of course I never would, because it wouldn't be appropriate.
Yeah, I'll just add the subtext. Yeah,
well,
but it is appropriate. It's fine. We've got a couple of people who are very enthusiastic in their movements at church, and it's lovely. But it's just not me.
It's good to hear Stuart still dancing.
Yeah, as if he's ever going to get up and dance. Anyone who knows him who's listening will know that he's not. Maybe I'm more likely to. I don't know. Yeah, there we go. Is that the note that we end on? Is that the final image we leave our listeners with? Cool, thanks. See you next time. You've been listening to Ordinary, the podcast seeking to help ordinary Christians live for Christ in everyday life. If you found this helpful, please do share with a friend. Come and find us on social media. We'd love to have you join our conversations. You can find us on Twitter @OrdinaryCCHH, on Instagram @OfficialOrdinaryPodcast, and on YouTube @OrdPod. That's ORDPOD. Or you can email your comments or questions to ordinary@cchh.org.uk. We'll see you next time.